Yeah. I love how excited that guy is for the Jeff Dubay Show on a daily basis. I memean, I know I am. I took a 2-hour nap in Devil's Advocate today. I mean, you can't make it up. I mean, it was like a flashback to school. My name's Jeff Dubay, and I'm here with Jason McGovern. I mean, I got here about 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I always come to this, the back room from where we do the show, and they they got like a little partition that kind of it's a sliding door with the sections that you can close off to make this room private, and I always come back here and I shut that door and I get out the computer, watch a little Netflix. Get into I'm almost done with season 2 of The Following, so I'm kind of wrapped up in that. Sons of Anarchy, whatever. But I was so tired, so just for a second, I leaned forward to put my head on the table like I was a student. I felt like I was in high school or junior. I mean, all of a sudden,
did you wake up with a puddle of drool
on
a folder?
It was unbelievable. Well, I don't have a folder, but I mean, there was excessive salivation. I woke up, my right leg was as dead to the world as it could be. I mean, it was so asleep that I couldn't stand up for like 3 minutes. I didn't dare. I mean, I just thought, you better wait. I mean, if I would have stood up, I would have just crashed into this bookcase.
And at no point, no staff member came up and said, "Hey,
isn't that funny?"
I mean, they know you're not passed out because you're not drinking.
Right. Well, I don't. Yeah, exactly. And I'm here. I get here on Mondays and Tuesdays. I get here early afternoon every time, just because I'm downtown and I've got very little to do. And there's a fair few places where you can fall asleep at a table and not be thrown out. So I come to Devil's Advocate.
Here to the library, right?
Well, I mean, here at Devil's Advocate, it is a private room, so I'm not like nobody could see that I've fallen asleep. But I walked out to the bar and said, I just slept for 2 hours in the back. Like, God, they were so mad they didn't know because they wanted to take a picture and put it online and embarrass me or something.
Yeah, that would have been good.
But
I actually wish they would have done that.
Yeah, it would anything that brings a little notoriety to our sponsors. Whatever.
We'll take it.
A tweet for Devil's Advocate is a tweet for justice. But anyway,
Excuse me?
I get a little carried away sometimes.
Maybe a little.
Well, I'm very. What's the word? Is it flugilistic? Is that the word? Flugilistic? Like you're just red, white, and blue to the core, basically.
I don't know if I even know the word you're talking about.
And I'm not sure if that's the right word.
Usualistic?
Well,
I don't know.
Something like that. It's something like that. It's I don't want to expose any more ignorance.
My IQ's not quite the same as yours.
Mine. I tell you, that's the old me. That's not me anymore. But anyway, there's a few things to talk about. Yesterday's show, we got into the fact that people are they get a little overexcited about the Big Ten's lackluster bowl record. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not at all pleased with how the Gophers have looked against really mediocre competition the last 2 years. But I mean, my statement was that from this day going forward, it's really unreasonable to expect any Big Ten team, and I mean any of them, to have a winning record in bowl games. None of them should. They should win from time to time. But, I mean, to win more than you lose is not realistic.
Is it purely because you can't recruit here like you can in the other conferences now?
Well, the talent, and I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here because I think Ohio State right now is the best team in the country. I mean, at this moment. If you put J.T. Barrett on the field tomorrow, I think they beat Alabama. Well, of course, they don't play him for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is.
Right.
But I think right now they're probably the best team in the country. And I've said over and over again that this conference is going to be reasonably irrelevant on the national scale because the college football has become about speed and nothing but speed. I mean, if you don't have it, you can't win in college football anymore. With the spread, read zone, option, this, and I mean, you've got to have guys. I mean, you have the linebackers and corners and safeties that can run like crazy. I mean, and they've got to have some size too. I mean,
and that's what the Big Ten has been adding, though, right? We're just maybe a decade behind the SEC.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't put a time on it, but I mean, the flat out fact of the matter is there's more speed in the South. I mean, there's faster kids in Florida. There's faster kids in Mississippi. There just are. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, it's a school like Ohio State. They're probably as close to as that, when it comes to just the level of athleticism. I would say Ohio State is as close. Hey, Tony, what's up? Ohio State is as close to a Southern, an SEC or ACC team. I mean, there's some teams in the Big 12 that can run like the wind. I mean, when Oklahoma's good, which they're not.
But the reason I brought that up too is you've said this year that Kill has put together a defense that's actually for the first time in a long time, at least in Minnesota, and not just physical but actually quick too, and especially with the corners and the linebackers.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is the most athletic defense I've ever seen in Minnesota. Now again, that's
That's like comparing them to
what?
It's
like saying it's the hottest girl I've ever seen in Iowa. I mean, it's just not that big a deal. But in all honesty, I mean, he understands that like his offense is the kind of offense you have to defend against. Spread zone, read kind of a thing with the, where you got to have guys who can cover one-on-one. You got to have guys who can cover a lot of ground because your defense is very spread out. So, I mean, having seen how that offense works against defenses, he puts together a light and athletic, speedy defense to combat it, to go against it. So I mean, he and Tracy Claeys, and I think the world of Tracy Claeys. So it's just, having said all that, I'm getting back to the original point of how I think it's unrealistic to expect Big Ten teams to have winning records in bowl games. And the reason, as we got into yesterday, I just briefly revisited, because if you're one of the elite teams, if you're Ohio State or Michigan State or Wisconsin, you are going to one of two places on a yearly basis. You're going to Pasadena to play a team from the West, USC, UCLA, Oregon, whatever. If you're not, you're in the playoff scenario. You're going into the deep South to play Alabama, as Ohio State is this year. I mean, so and then beyond that, if you're the next tier, the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, you're in Florida playing Georgia. You're in Florida playing South Carolina. You're in Georgia playing Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I mean, or Auburn, for God's sakes. I mean, the Big Ten has, bowl alliances that, give you like 3 or 4 matchups against the SEC in the Deep South. I mean, you cannot expect.
That's a money thing, though, right? Because the Big Ten, because they do have money too, and the SEC, you put them together.
Well, here's what you got.
Good for everybody.
Yeah, you're right.
Except for the guys on the field.
Well, here's what you got, and you're dead right about the SEC and the Big Ten getting into bed together, because the SEC is the best football in the country, and the Big Ten is the most powerful conference in the country. And when I say that, I mean the Big Ten has more money than any of these other conferences could dream of. I mean, and it really is. I mean, the NCAA exists, and these programs exist to make money. I mean, it is what it is. And when you add, the Big Ten Network changed everything. The Big Ten Network, and I mean that for the better. You got TV markets in New York City. You got TV market in you got Washington D.C. You got Philly. You got Pittsburgh. We had some good ones to begin with. I mean, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago. I mean, we had some pretty good ones. I mean, they're better than Tuscaloosa, Gainesville, Oxford, and whatever. I mean, it's Auburn, whatever. So I mean, we already had some good markets, but when you continue to push this thing all the way to the East Coast, I mean, you brought the big boys home. I mean,
does this contradict a little bit what you're saying then too, though? Because maybe the Big Ten, because of being a power conference, I mean, if you can tell the kids you're going to be on your own network and you're going to get all this TV time, is that enough to recruit here? Because you don't have the warm weather and the beautiful girls wearing not that much, except for a couple of months in the spring.
Right.
I guess if you bring the recruits here at the right time, actually, this is a great place to bring them because we do have the hot chicks.
Yeah, but
other than that,
plenty of women here.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, I think that the Big Ten actually, and because of what they're doing now, they are catching up to the SEC. They're changing their style a little bit. It's not this big lumbering. It's not like the Big Ten basketball, where it's a totally different conference and a totally different style of play as much.
That's by far the most physical of the conferences in basketball.
Right. So I think that's what it was. It was like you all have also said. It was the big farm boy, the big white boy, linebackers and all that stuff. And now it's the speedy, quicker guys. Yeah. And so they're catching up to the SEC that way. And now you put on to the fact that they're on the Big Ten Network and they have that kind of that money power too. Does that put them in a position to be able to compete with these other conferences?
Well, it definitely does at some point lead to a competitive advantage. Whether or not it's a great enough advantage to bridge that gap between the athletes in the South is what they are to the North. It could in a couple of ways. Like you said, you'd be getting TV exposure in these major cities. And also, let's not forget that college athletics is starting to change. We're getting to an age where players are going to be compensated. Whatever, and we're also going to get to an age, or we're arriving at an age where the 5 power conferences are basically going to be allowed to make their own rules. So I mean, the NCAA is going to be, I don't want to say powerless, but it's almost like the NCAA saying, we're sick of this shit. It's a headache. We try to keep an eye on shit, and all we do is get ripped. You take care of it.
You guys do it.
We've done this long enough. The Big Ten, worry about your own play. Everybody take care of your own.
But what does that mean for sports then, though, if they start going down their own roads?
Well, that's the thing. It's completely uncharted territory, so we don't know. But the way I understand it is, like the Big Ten could be, they could have a different level of stipend for their athlete than somebody who's a non-Power 5 conference, like Boise State or something.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Boise.
Well, Boise's now in a major conference.
Yeah, they're in the Big East, which makes all the sense in the world, or whatever the Big East used to be. I don't even care anymore. But
no.
North Dakota State. Minnesota, has the financial resources and they have the ability to compensate better than North Dakota State. Whatever. There's going to be whatever competitive gap exists. It's going to widen between the big.
It's going to be worse for the smaller schools.
Correct. But I don't know. I'm not sure how uniform the rules have to be or will have to be across the major 5, the Power 5 conferences, or if there are going to be a great deal of disparity within those. Because if they're allowed to do what they want, the Big Ten's going to have the resources to separate itself in some areas.
That means that the conference with the least amount of money of the Big 5 is going to be bitching about that and hoping the NCAA can somehow mesh this whole thing together and keep it so it's equal across the board.
Either that or just cheat like hell.
Well, or that. Which of course happens too.
And I'm not sure what's going to constitute cheating anymore. If the people who's the fat cats in Tuscaloosa and the fat cats in Gainesville, that sit back and write checks for their program. They're not. If they see, that there's financial inequity in the game or whatever, that their resources don't match what other conferences do. I don't know. Trust me. People step up and they start slipping $100 bills into players' pocket.
Well, and when you start paying the players, isn't it easier to do that?
Well, that's what I'm trying to. That's what the point I'm getting to in a roundabout way is. I don't know how you. I don't know what's illegal. We won't know. We don't know yet. We don't know what would be even illegal, and we don't know if there's a way. Yeah, the rule about players never being able to have a job. I've heard people complain about that for years. I think they've changed it. But there was a time not so long ago when a student athlete was not allowed to work.
Just because they had to devote their time to their sport?
Well, no, because it would have been a money laundering system. It would have been, the booster hires a kid
the booster's auto shop or something and make
paint his house
$1,000 a week.
Yeah, and he shows up for 2 minutes and he got a check for $5,000.
Right.
Well, you said I could have a job, and so it would just have been a way for people to cheat, above board, so that they didn't allow kids to have jobs. I want to say that rule changed, and fairly recently, but I could be wrong about that. I'm just worried about whether or not I have a job. I can't worry about the college kids.
Well, and I'm sure if they did change that, it's highly regulated in some way anyway.
Well, yeah.
So that cheating part doesn't happen.
Well, you know what? The NCAA doesn't regulate anything. You know how the NCAA catches people? They wait for them to tell on themselves, or just something shows up in the newspaper.
Get caught by something else. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Either school self-reports. They call up and say, "Hey, we screwed up. We did." A bunch of things wrong, when in reality they did a ton of things wrong, and they're just going to tell you this much and get off the hook.
Yeah.
Or you pick up the Star Tribune and you get the George Dorman, Clem Haskins Sleaze Fest, and you're like, the NCAA goes, "Hey, did you see the Minneapolis paper today?" The NCAA doesn't regulate anything. They just sit around.
And they have very little incentive to, right? They want their brand to stay good, so why would it's kind of like the NFL. They want to keep as much quiet as they can.
Yeah, you're exactly right. What they want to do is, be the leveler of infraction. They want people to read, or see that, hey, the NCAA came down on so and so.
Right.
And it looks like they're doing their job. It looks like somebody's minding the store. When in reality, they're just sitting around waiting for people to tell them what's up. They're not looking into anything themselves. Every school self-investigates. It's
that's true too.
Unless it gets,
which is sick.
Once things get way out of hand, like they did in SMU in the 80s. The NCAA is legitimately poking around. The federal government was poking around.
Well, Penn State, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Same type of thing.
Again, that's not to get off on another tangent. I still don't understand how, as disgusting as molestation is, and minors, and the whole thing is disgusting. I still didn't understand the NCAA's angle. I don't know how these are infractions of NCAA rules. They're infractions of laws. Go to prison. I don't care if you're in a bowl game. Get in jail.
Yeah.
Lock somebody up. Which they did.
Unless you're saying the program itself was endorsing the behavior, which I don't think anybody said.
And basically the NCAA exists to keep. Well, and this is the mission statement. This isn't reality, but they're supposedly just to keep teams from getting competitive advantage, like paying players. And I don't know what.
Integrity of the game is what they're supposed to protect.
I don't know what the competitive advantage. When they came down on Penn State with a 3-year probation, no bowl game, I thought that was ridiculous.
Well, because who are you trying to hurt? You're just hurting the kids going there now, and the recruiting and the whole program for more years down the road.
But if you take that point of view, people think, oh, you're going to put the needs of a football program ahead of molested kids. I'm like, no, these are
apples
not
and oranges.
Yeah, they don't necessarily.
I mean, Sandusky needs to be put away for life and
yes,
have everything
yes.
that happens to a person in prison happen to him. But other than that,
I don't think he'll ever see general population. I can't imagine they'd risk it.
Just one day accidentally.
Well, he'd be dead.
I know.
I think 1 hour.
Whoops! One day he got out there and he's in the gym and and a barbell fell.
I think rope. I mean, it'd be over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so back to the point of why, Big Ten. I said yesterday, Big Ten teams are going to have losing records in bowl games going forward. It is what it is, and I just, I tried to get into the reasons. I know I start to ramble and you go off on tangents.
No,
but,
really?
But I mean, again, you look at the Gophers in recent years haven't had it terrible. They had to play Texas Tech in Houston, and they've had. Did you smell that one? I'm sorry about that.
No, I'm just getting comfortable over here actually. But thanks for now. I will.
You had a look of chagrin on your face. I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna have to explain this one. But anyway, the Gophers played Alabama in Nashville. Or, back in the 80s, they'd go to the Deep South and play Clemson. I was there for that Independence Bowl. I mean, it was a sea of orange and just like a little pocket of maroon going, woo! You're just in the corner. You could barely even hear us. And the next year we went to Memphis and played Tennessee. So I mean, it is what it is. If we would have gone to the Holiday Bowl this year, they were saying our opponent was going to be USC or UCLA. I mean, in San Diego. So I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's just nobody. They don't have bowl games in Duluth. I mean, it's just Hayward, Wisconsin bid on one, and they said, "Are you fucking crazy? You're northern Wisconsin." But not. The point is,
population couldn't fill a stadium.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is you're just going to have to go to the South and the West Coast and play teams in their own backyards with rabid fan bases that just they hate where they live so much they can't wait to just travel and see a game. That's why these you think of all these great traveling groups of fans like Nebraska and Iowa or Madison, Wisconsin Badgers, or these teams from the South. These are people. Every example I just gave you are people who are looking for any excuse to cross a border. I mean, just for a weekend, get me out of this fucking hellhole. I mean, it's all there is to it. And I mean, I've taken solace as a Gopher fan. I mean, I've put up with countless, armies of invading idiots just coming to my city, and just kicking my team's ass. Just, whatever. Even if it was, somebody who doesn't always do it, like a rivalry with give and take, like North Dakota hockey. Anytime my team would lose to Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, whatever, I was able to just have a moment of perspective where I sit back in my chair while these idiots attempt to give me shit and think, you're driving to Grand Forks tonight. I mean, that is the ultimate scoreboard. I mean, I live in Minneapolis. You live in Grand Forks. Just go back and feel shitty about your life.
But the thing about the people down in Mississippi or anywhere down there in the South is that they still do have the better weather. So you wouldn't want to live there for any other reason. But when it comes to January 1st in Minnesota, no one wants to be here.
Well, yeah,
so they do have that at least.
Yeah. Have you ever fornicated with a member of your immediate family? I mean,
no.
Scoreboard. I mean, we don't do that up here. Well, Stearns County. But outside of Stearns County, we go outside the family. We don't go to family reunions to pick up chicks. I mean, that's a Biloxi thing. That's a Hattiesburg thing. I mean, it's just not a Minnesota thing. And again, outside of Stearns County, anyway, back again to my point about Big Ten teams and their losing records, or their expected failures and their substantiated failures in bowl games. 10 teams made bowl games this year. Again, Big Ten, moneymaker. 10 teams in bowl games. I mean, there was a time.
Obviously, what, 3 or 4 too many?
I'm gonna tell you a little story. I'm gonna spin you a little yarn. There was a time when the Big Ten only had 10 teams.
What a thought!
Believe it, I know. Now they've got 10 going to a bowl game. I mean, it's almost a ludicrous notion.
That is insane.
But guess what? All 10, not 8, not 9. 10 out of 10 are underdogs in this year's games. Every single one expected to lose.
How you'd think there'd be one in there that would get a team that would be worse? I mean, how does that happen?
Well,
is it again just because we have the money, but we go to the teams where they actually have good football teams? So that's that's how you put the two together. That's the Big Ten and the other conferences.
Well, hang on.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Is it not the most ridiculous phenomenon that when it hits 5 o'clock and we turn microphones on, that I start to sweat profusely?
It is interesting.
I mean, you've seen me.
You're fine right up until the moment we start.
Yeah, you get here at 4:30, 4:15. And I'm sitting here watching Netflix or looking at my phone or trying to, take care of social media. I mean, I'm barely even awake. I mean, I'm just calm and just relaxed. And then the mics go on, and I'm like the scene in Airplane where they're trying to land, and the water's pouring out. what the hell happens to me?
Fountains coming down his face.
Yeah,
but did you do that in the studio when you were at either one of the stations?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So once the mics go hot, so do you.
Wait, well, here's what happens. I mean, again, I'm no expert on this, but this has happened to me at ESPN. It didn't happen to me at the Fan. But I just think I fried my central nervous system by doing a dangerous narcotic for 4 years, 2.5 years, 4 years. Yes, I'm going to give myself more credit than I deserve. But I mean, I really do. I think doing a stimulant basically ruined my central nervous system.
Wow.
So it takes nothing to set me off and put me in what appears to be a state of exceeding panic. God, somebody get me out of here. But anyway, I mean, why are they all underdogs? I think it's because of the things I just told you. Although I'll tell you this again. If J.T. Barrett was playing, I'd take Ohio State in that game, straight up, right now. And this is something else I wanted to get into today because this is the first year of the football playoff. This is history, and there's always going to be when you have a tournament I mean, in the pros you play to get in, and you get in with your record. In college, whether it be basketball or football, a committee sits in a room and picks the participants. And anytime you have that system, there's going to be room for debate. There's going to be people making arguments because there's no substantial, it's
subjective.
Yeah, exactly. There's no, specific criteria, to be selected, with the exception of basketball takes conference tournament champions automatically. But I mean, so it's all going to be, like you said, very subjective. So
and just to interrupt you for 1 second though, when this switches to 8 or 16 teams, don't you think there'll be automatic bids too, for the football?
Probably.
Wouldn't you think there'd have to be some?
Well, you think when
the conferences push for that?
If they go to 8, I would think the Power 5 would each get, a champion from their, their title game would go.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess 3 at large would be plenty. But this year worked out to where you had 3 teams on the bubble for 1 spot. And I don't understand how Florida State kept dropping. I mean, and I watched Florida State this year. Don't get me wrong. I watched Clemson kick their ass. I mean, when that game was over, I mean, I just sat there and thought, how did Florida State just win this game? They played a god-awful quarterback. Jameis Winston's backup. I'd take Mitchell Leitner, and I'm not. This guy, I can't even remember his name. But he was sweating more than me before the game started. He was scared to death. He was in the deer in the headlights. I mean, Clemson absolutely owned them. But Dabo Swinney's teams every year, you will never find a coach who puts together better teams with less results than Dabo Swinney. I mean, he'll find bizarre ways to derail potentially championship season. And I'm not saying it's necessarily coaching. It's not necessarily. I mean, he's got to have some culpability. But I mean, I'm not going to point to, or I'm not able to point to any specific examples of him making mistakes. But his teams will. I mean, they'll be highly ranked late into the season. And then they'll lose to NC State or something, and it'll all go to hell. But they lost a game to Florida State where they went to Tallahassee and kicked their asses. I mean, they just absolutely destroyed them and lost, and it was bizarre. Notre Dame, which a game I watched right here.
I watched that game too, and they lost.
I mean,
that bullshit end of the game call was so bad.
But see, here's what's dangerous about the system of voting and selecting is if you win the game. I mean, like if it's an NFL type system, you win the game, it goes in the win column, and you use tiebreakers to decide. There's no subjectivity. But you win a game like that, if you're Florida State, does it do you any good? Because the voters are still going to say, fuck that, they lost. I'm voting them. I'm moving, and they did. They continued to drop. And it got to the point where you started to wonder, how much can you punish this team for winning games, even if they're not pretty?
And putting a 0 up matters. That does matter. I don't care who you played. Well, it does matter who you played. But, I mean, it doesn't matter how you won. If you do put up the 0, I think that makes you number 1.
Yeah, and there was no doubt that they were going to make it once they beat Georgia Tech in their conference title game. There's no doubt that an undefeated team was going to go. But I understood when they got dropped to number 2 because Mississippi State at the time was either unbeaten or had 1 loss. And I think it's viable to look at a team from the SEC with 1 loss as a better team from another conference that's undefeated.
Sure.
I think that's a fair allowance.
Just by level of competition, yeah.
And being number 2 is, again, there's no shame in being number 2. I'll just don't tell feces that. But the back on point. Oh God, was there ever a point?
What
again?
The hell?
It's just awkward to say number 2. It makes me have to go to the bathroom.
I'm just gonna let you sit out there with that.
But the controversy that existed this year was, did Ohio State deserve to go in front of TCU, or did TCU deserve to go in front of Baylor? Because I don't know if you remember this, but TCU was kicking the shit out of Baylor. I mean, they were ahead by like 4 touchdowns, like as they went into the fourth quarter. I was watching it. I don't remember the exact, but I mean, the game ended it was like 59-56 or something absurd. It was like more points than a Big Ten basketball game. But I mean, it was a horrific choke job. And I'll tell you this: the Big 12 is. People want to pick on the Big Ten. The Big 12 is a joke. There's other than TCU, nobody's played a lick of defense in the Big 12 in 20 fucking years. I mean, there's a reason their games all get to the 50s.
It's always over 45 points every game.
There's a reason Oklahoma State, scores more points in football than they do in basketball. I mean, nobody defends in that league. Nobody plays a lick of defense in that league until TCU came in and showed people what it looks like to actually stop somebody. But Baylor did run it up on them. I mean, they gave up the big lead, and they. But the bottom line here is, people. I've heard a lot of complaining, on behalf of TCU and Baylor, and people who want one of those teams against Ohio State are saying that, Ohio State, the big name, the big, they got the cachet, they got the swerve. It's funny they take them instead of one of these, TCU or Baylor that aren't very sexy. You cannot possibly think that Ohio State is not one of the best 4 teams in the country right now. If you honestly have watched college football this year, and you tell me Ohio State with their one loss is not one of the top 4 teams, then you don't get it. I mean,
if
you don't get it
Ohio
at all.
State doesn't absolutely demolish Wisconsin, does that change anything? If they win 27-24,
yes,
are they out?
Probably, because I mean, the tournaments, I mean, you still have to, the NCAA the selection committee would have to justify their selection, and it would be harder to do it. I mean, this gave them the opportunity to do it, I thought, without being overly criticized. And I don't know that they were overly criticized, but they were unjustly criticized. I mean, Ohio State, if anybody's watched college football this year, Ohio State lost a home game to Virginia Tech. So people want to say, well, okay, you've got one loss, and it's a bad loss. And it's how you separate things sometimes in college football. This team has one loss. Well, who did they lose to? In TCU's case, it was Baylor, a pretty good team, and it was on the road. But it was a horrific way to lose. I can't even think off the top of my head who Baylor lost to, but you start looking at losses and quality of the loss, and they say, well, Virginia Tech sucked. And they did.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, Virginia Tech went gas pipe. After that game, they lost the next week at home, and it didn't get better anytime soon. So, the Virginia Tech loss is a significant smudge. There's no doubt about it. But, again, if you're going to be able to select teams on subjective criteria, they could sit back and say, well, it was the second game of the season. There's the first or second game that a freshman quarterback, this J.T. Barrett, was starting. I mean, he wasn't anywhere near what he is now. He threw, about 22 interceptions in that game, if I'm not mistaken, an NCAA record. But I mean, he wasn't ready. It was a team that was, trying to deal, with losing a Heisman candidate going into the season at the quarterback position, and you can see how it's understandable. And then you watch the season unfold, and you see how good they got. I mean, I'll tell you this. I had never really, sat down and studied J.T. Barrett until they came here, and he freaked the shit out of me. I mean, he's if you sometimes you're distracted when you're watching a game. You look away, and all of a sudden you look up when the play's in progress, so you don't see the snap. But if you had some of those moments against Ohio State, you look up at the TV post snap and you see some guy running away from everybody, you would assume that this guy just caught a pass. When in reality, if you watch the whole play, it's just the quarterback running through us because he's a freak. His athletic ability is off the charts, and he's absolutely destined for stardom and greatness in this league. But you could so easily just look at Ohio State again. You can't possibly not think they're one of the best 4. Well, I think they could beat Alabama.
Other side of the argument, I actually don't disagree with you. I think you could make a case for both. But TCU, it is a little bit bullshit to punish a team for not losing. You shouldn't get kicked out of the top 4 without losing, or at least there's definitely a case that can be made for them. But
that's more flaw in the system than it is.
Well, but that's where though, if you're going to have that flaw in the system, you side on the side of money. You always do and always will.
Yeah.
And everyone should just understand that especially until you get to 8 teams.
What else has always confused me about just polls in general is why does it matter when you lose? I mean, had Florida State lost late in the season, that would have been one loss. There was a group of teams with one loss that you're trying to split up their chances of getting in there. And I think the general consensus was if Florida State loses one game, They're done.
No matter what.
I mean,
but it was because of the ways they won. Yeah,
that had something to
do that does matter, and that's that's the TCU argument against them too. Is
right.
The way they won or the way they almost lost, and
But I mean, for some reason, that early. How to say early? No. If you're going to lose, the earlier in the season you lose, the better. I don't know why that matters. But in this case,
because we have short memories and because we're human and we like to see what's right in front of us and judge by that, and not go, well, 3 months ago.
That's you're dead on. You're dead right. But I'm also going to say that this year, I think there's actually a real reason for it in terms of looking back and saying, well, this team's not the same team they were when they lost. I mean, because now that you have when you had a poll mattered, but it wasn't a matter of, okay, this team. When you look at 1, 2, 3, 4 this year, you knew those were the 4 teams in. When you're watching, a top 10 kind of, fall into place in the typical college football season, you're not exactly sure who's going to finish in what spot or who's going to go to what game. So you like you said, you see who's good now, and that loss is not as fresh in my memory, so I'm going to move this team up. But in this year, where it's actually not even, I mean, it is a poll, but really what it is, it's a selection committee picking a tournament field. I think it's easy for them to look back and say, well, Ohio State is not who they were when they played Virginia Tech. This team doesn't even resemble that team, and I think that's the right way to handle it.
And I like that part of it as opposed to the computers making the decision, because I do want the human interaction there. I actually do like that they can go, holy shit, look what they did to Wisconsin. They had that blip, and that's what it was. Because you can have a loss, and it can mean something, too. I mean, that Virginia Tech could have really showed, okay, there's something wrong with this team. They're flawed. But it didn't. It just actually showed what you've said, too, is that they grew up, and they matured, and look at what they became over the season. And I do want the committee to be able to go at the end of the season, no. Maybe it wasn't up until now, but now we're at the end of the season, and these are the top 4 teams. That makes it more exciting.
Dude, you're dead right. Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that they can just say, I mean, there should be some human element. I mean, you should be able to say, we're the best 4 teams right now, and that puts you on Ohio State, without doubt. And I'll say this. When Barrett went down against Michigan, my first thought was, Jesus Christ, Wisconsin might be able to beat them. And Wisconsin, I knew all year long that Wisconsin wasn't one of the great Wisconsin teams. This was a good team that overachieved a little bit. I think they're pretty flawed, and they overachieved a little bit.
They were a great rushing team,
They could run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball at all.
No.
I mean, they defensively, they had some numbers, but I don't think they had the talent defensively that they've had recently with guys like Borland gone. And I always laugh when people say, oh, boy, Michigan State, best defense in the country. Bullshit. I mean, playing against Minnesota, I mean, not to take a shot at our guys, but we haven't been a dynamic offense. I mean, we can't throw the ball either.
Exactly.
I mean, there's plenty of teams in the Big Ten that will pad your stats defensively going against them. I mean, it is what it is. Michigan State, Wisconsin, these are good defenses. They're not Alabama. They're not. I mean, they're just not. They're not these Southern teams that are just loaded with NFL talent. So I knew Wisconsin was a flawed team. I mean, we saw them blow a game so ridiculously blatantly to LSU, and we found out LSU sucks, or that they at least were not the LSU that we're used to. Nick, you ever creaking my chairs?
And you're on one of the good ones. You're not on one of the little house on the prairie chairs.
Yeah, you're right. Well, so are you. They
but mine's not squeaky.
Because I'm fidgety.
Because I'm not jumping around the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. I never sit still. But so going into the Big Ten championship game, knowing that Wisconsin, I looked at them as a plucky overachiever. I don't think this is insulting to say talent-wise they were not one of the great Wisconsin teams that we've seen in recent years. They were an ordinary passing team and a slightly above average defense with a great running game. And they overachieved, and they also took advantage of a weak division. I mean, if Minnesota's the second best team in the division, and again, I mean, I love the Gophers, and we're going the right direction. But I mean, it's not it's not Ohio State, Michigan State, battling it out on the other half.
Well, no, when you say Wisconsin and Minnesota are actually really, really close right now, these 2 teams.
I mean,
this year,
absolutely. And then Nebraska took a step back. That kind of opened the door up. I mean, it wasn't the hardest division to win this year. I mean, it was a vulnerable division. I think that's fair to say. So the fact that Barrett went down the week before the Big Ten title game, I for a week went in thinking, Wisconsin. They could, as good as Ohio State is, they might be ripe. They might be ready. This quarterback thing's a problem. Wisconsin went in and put a 70 on Nebraska in a Big Ten title game recently, and I thought the Nebraska team was pretty good. So I was ready. I was mentally preparing myself for a Wisconsin upset. I'm excited. I really did think it was possible. So when I see 59-0, I'm thinking, I mean, if I would have gone in thinking, this is an easy one for Ohio State, they're going to win by 3 touchdowns, it might not have affected me that much, but to think that I was putting some stock into Wisconsin before and they lose by 60, I mean, that's...
we do need to catch up on our break. But
we haven't taken any?
No, but how the hell did that happen? Wisconsin's not that bad either. I mean, did they just not show up? I watched, and I didn't watch the whole game, but watching a bit of that game, it just didn't look like that team was even there.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Wisconsin's got a I use finger quotes here, a highly ranked defense, a well thought of defense, but they don't have athletes. I mean, they've got a few, but they don't have 11 athletes on defense. And the one team in the Big Ten that can expose you athletically is Ohio State.
Wait, weren't they playing like a rookie corner too? Or a freshman? Well, I mean,
I would imagine
but I mean, I think the freshman corner got burned a couple of those long touchdowns too.
I was flicking back and forth between that and the ACC championship because Florida State was in a little bit of a meat grinder. But two things happened here. Urban Meyer knew going in that he had to win for size, and he was not going to call off the dogs until the game was over. I mean, he was going to go pedal to the floor.
And the announcers called that right away, too. They said that he doesn't care because they've got to put this in the minds of those guys that they're picking, and it doesn't hurt. We are crushing them.
And it doesn't hurt at all that you're playing Saturday night as opposed to the guys who just played
You got me watching, and I wouldn't watch a game that the Gophers aren't involved in that.
But the committee is. But nonetheless, this game is
that's true.
But this game is the final statement. I mean, this is the last thing they see before they go into their room or whatever the hell they do. I mean, that's the freshest. So Urban Meyer went in there and made the big final statement, and he's got a team athletically that is as close to what you see in the South, being this far north. And Wisconsin athletically does not have the defense to deal with that. They just don't. But I can't believe we haven't taken a break.
I know. Well, you've been on a roll.
I've been on a roll. I've been sweating and having a little stroke. But we'll be back and see if I'll try to make it through the break. Folks who've listened to the show, they know that I lived in the Uptown area here, right down Pleasant Avenue, as a matter of fact, and on the corner of Pleasant Lake is where Uptown Pond is. And I have been here numerous times, had numerous business dealings with them. It's just a nice place with good, honest people. Bob Jacobson, the owner, you run the place. You've always been good to me.
Thanks, Jeff. We try. That's part of our business. We're here to help people, and so everybody walks in the door. We hope we can help.
Well, what I've always appreciated is when people are nice to people who are the low man on the totem pole. Like when I was a bat boy, I liked the star guys who were nice to the bat boy. Right. And I mean, I came in here and you guys didn't know who I was. You didn't know I had a radio show, and you treated me great. I mean, just a guy off the street.
Listen, that's the idea with I think a smaller family type business. Somebody walks in the door, we don't want to let them see everybody gets treated the same way, and we hope that's the case. And we don't want to see them leave without. We try our very best.
It's really easy. It's easy. It's low pressure. Good, honest people. Right on the corner of Lake Street and Pleasant Avenue. You guys got to check out Uptown Pond.
Hi, I'm Terry Daniel, and I've been a voice actor in Minneapolis for over 2 decades now. How often are you getting compliments on your voice? Now is the time to do something about it. If you're interested in getting into voiceovers, please contact me via my website at universalvoicetalent.com.
Back at Devil's Advocate on a Tuesday. We are 37 minutes in, 23 to go to the top. It's a kind of a weird week for us because promoting things going on in the network and on this show. Tomorrow's Wild Wednesday from Burger Mo's. But my two gurus, my two, and well, not to discount you, Jason, but I mean Schweitz
and I would never call myself a hockey guru.
Well, and you know what, I am not a big NHL guy. I'm a lukewarm, maybe better than that NHL guy. But I mean, most of my college passion, most of my hockey passion and hockey expertise lies in the collegiate ranks. Scott Schweitz and Tony Dean are legitimate NHL gurus. I mean,
they're experts.
Yeah, I mean, they get into the minutia of it. Tony is working tomorrow. He's kind of touchy about what we say.
Yeah, it was just law enforcement. Let's just stick
law
with
enforcement.
He's got something going on in law enforcement.
Yep. Steve Gutenberg, that's your hit. I mean, he's in the academy. He's not, but I can't use the word cop. It's like saying the word bong in a record store. You just can't say it.
Right.
But anyway, I digress. And Scott is out of town on business. And we were still going to try to just, maybe Skype him in or something. But the fact that they're both out of town, I'm going to see if I can maybe cheat a little bit and get a couple guys in there to talk some Gopher hockey with me. But stay tuned. We'll figure out what's going on tomorrow from Burger Mo's.
Well, you know what? Being that we are at Burger Mo's and there's going to be a ton of people there too, we should invite the audience to come up and ask some questions. I mean, they don't have to even just sit down and talk, but they can just come up and ask a couple questions. We'll have some fun tomorrow.
Well, and since there's a game tonight, we will have something to talk about, game related tomorrow.
Right.
The Islanders in town, and as I pointed out last week at Burger Mo's, the Islanders are loaded with native sons. I mean, they've got Minnesotans up and down the roster, and Impact Minnesotans. And then I saw Russo today post an article that there will be 8 Minnesotans on the ice tonight. Now, that's not counting the officials. I hope. But I mean, that's
probably a couple of them.
That's pretty significant.
That is cool.
It's a big number. So,
Speaking of Russo,
yes, that's back.
Is that where you were going?
I was just going to get into the announcement. The Alive and Social Network has really started to grow. Thank God, because my back was getting tired. I'm just kidding.
I'm light, so holding me up's easy.
Well, yeah.
The rest of the network.
I mean, you're basically the Robin of the network right now. I knew you'd like that one. When the Social Network started, Alive and Social Network, it was the music showcase on Saturdays at Shamrocks, and the show and live band karaoke, correct? And then you came in and got the pubcast up and running.
Yep.
And congratulations on the numbers growing.
Thank you.
And then Rusty Gatenby came along.
Correct.
With his enormous head. And when I say that, I don't mean
never miss him.
I don't mean he's arrogant. He's a hell of a guy. I mean, he just legitimately has a head that is physically the size of a beach ball. But I mean, I think I've seen it get bounced around at Twins games. But he came along with the Rusty Gatenby review, RustyGatenbyReview.com. And then we started to hit some. I mean, Rusty started the wave of high profile guys coming in, because after that Jim Suhan came in with SuhanUnfiltered.com, and now Michael Russo is on board, and he's going to do a weekly hockey bit with Suhan. So
speaking of Suhan, who is always the master of the guests, as you pointed out,
his guest list is crazy good.
Well, I decided to take a page out of his book, and I stole him. So I'm having him on Thursday night on the pubcast at O'Gara's with Molly Burke. So
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you about this. I recruited the man. I'm giving myself too much credit. But I got in his ear about the podcast and how cool it is. You can do whatever you want. And he and I were the first thing I was told is he and I are going to do a weekly show together.
Yeah.
I'm the only person who hasn't done a show with him. He's been a guest on this.
I'm going to do Well, you've had him on your show, I guess. But I was going to say, I'm going to do a show before you do.
That's really cool. I'm actually going to. I'm going to come to that. I got nothing to do on Thursday.
No, and this is perfect in a way that we're former KSTP guys, and it was fun, and I felt like we could say a lot that we wanted to there, but this is now we get this free forum where it's just you really get to say everything that's on your mind, and it's perfect for Jim.
Well, I'll tell you this too. That's an area where I've been really, really lucky in my career is the places I've worked don't interfere with what you're doing on air. I mean, Chad Abbott, he knew that the shows knew what they were doing, and he never got in anybody's ear and said, hey, you can't do that. Except for when Jesse Ventura started ripping car dealers, or no, it was Mystic Lake Casino anyway. I mean, you got to protect the sponsor. I mean,
right.
I'm not going to come on here and say anything. God, did you use that chicken ball? What the fuck was wrong with that chicken ball?
And Mishki and I would get yelled at every once in a while when, say, he'd have a Vietnam vet on talking about whatever, and the guy'd say he's talking about the guy's been tortured, and next thing you know, he throws out an F-bomb on 50,000 watts, and I'm about to hit the dump button, and Tommy goes, no, let that go. We got yelled at for that, but that was worth it.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to try to leave names out of it, but a Minnesota sports icon, a coaching icon in the state of Minnesota. I'm not going to say the sport. I'm not going to say the level. Made a little bit of a racial slur, a little racial insensitivity on the P.A. Dubay show one day, and Chad Abbott, out of respect for this man, hit dump.
That's you should, especially when somebody slips. Was it a slip?
Well, he wasn't racial. He was actually speaking. I want to say, I don't want to say factually, but I mean what he said had some credence to it. He just had no political correctness to how he said it.
Okay.
He was very clumsy in how he phrased
it. So maybe racial instead of racist?
It wasn't racist.
I sometimes
That's
think
correct.
There's a difference.
It was not racist, but it was racially insensitive and then not politically correct.
Sure.
But he's such a great guy and a good meaning guy. We knew what he meant. But Abbott hit the dump button.
Save him that. Hey, sometimes I would love to have 8 seconds even here. That wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah, more than once. I'm not you. I mean me. I agree with you. But I mean, I've always had good freedom to do what we want material-wise. But here, this is beyond. And I mean, swearing, and I don't swear just to swear. But I mean, a long time ago, whether it be good or bad, in the early days of the P and Dubay show, I just decided that if I have a line, if I can come up with a one-liner, that I think is worth saying, I'm going to, operate without a filter. And if I have to apologize later, I'll apologize. But it's always worth it to take the line. That's my philosophy.
It is ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely,
one of those.
absolutely. But the problem is, I've taken it into my my life off the mic, and
there's more dangerous.
Yeah, but again, I've wound up in the doghouse a few times in my personal life, but I just think to myself, yeah, but if people were in a movie theater and saw that on the screen, they would have laughed. That's one of those moments where they would have just, like when they're doing the earmuffs in Old School, and Will Ferrell goes, cock, balls. I mean, it's just...
Well, I think that's the difference between radio and podcast, too, is now... When you're on the radio, you're a broadcaster, and there's this level of excellence and sophistication you're supposed to have. And when you're a podcaster, it's just, are you funny? Are you not? Are you entertaining? Are you not? We don't give a shit what you say.
Yeah.
And I love that about it.
I do too.
I love that aspect.
Well, it's about time. I mean, considering I threw my filter away, 15 years ago. It's about time I found a format that allows for it. I mean, I'm just so in other words, I was way ahead of my time. That's really all there is to it. Back to the live and social network and plugging things. We just hired a woman whose name escapes me. God, what's her name? This is gonna be the worst plug ever.
Now what?
This has now become the worst promo ever. The woman we just hired to do a show about something, and I get it's just the worst.
Well, if you can describe it,
I thought you would know.
Help.
I thought you would know, and then you would bail me out.
No, the last woman I heard added was Colleen Cruz on Rusty's show. Oh, well,
yes.
that's on Rusty's show.
Okay.
See, I thought you were already...
You did know.
I did know, yeah.
I knew
another former Hubbard.
Yeah,
we're taking them all.
Well, that's true. Although I'm not going to lie to you, I think of myself as a former KFAN employee.
No, and I completely understand why you would. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if I go to the Hall of Fame, I'm going to wear the KFAN hat at the on the induction on the little plaque.
Wow.
I know.
You didn't know where to go there, did you?
Well, you know what? I really should have. I should have come up with something to talk about out of that break, but I knew. We have another break coming up. I mean,
we still have another minute. We can regroup.
We don't need to regroup. What the hell
you
is that
sound like
supposed to
you
mean?
do.
What's that?
I'm fine.
No, that's insulting. Take a fucking break.
Okay, last year, 2013, I lived just down the road, Pleasant Avenue, just a few blocks here from Uptown Pond, which is right on the corner of Lake and Pleasant. And, there are a couple of times, you just try to get to that next payday, maybe a couple of bucks short. If you've got some items, jewelry, diamonds, electronics, I mean, you come down here and they give you a fair price for it, and then you come back a week later, 2 weeks later, whatever, you get it back at a real reasonable price.
So we're very competitive, we hope, on different angles, in different ends and different articles. Computers, electronics, TVs, jewelry. We buy, we give loans, and we also have emphasis on diamond jewelry too, that we also try and give credit for the best we can. We're specialists in that area also, so it's an all-round sort of combination.
Well, it's a great place. It's a nice, clean place with honest people, and I tell you what, it's got a real family feel to it. As a matter of fact, it's tied into Strauss family, and I go way back with the late, great Jerry. So, I mean, these are people I know and people I trust. You can find them on Twitter, too, by the way. They're at Uptown Pond, and also on Facebook, Uptown Pond, and UptownPond.net.
And I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the neighborhood. I'm coming back to the old hood. I was, on Pleasant Avenue for all of last year during my run on ESPN. What a run it was! But I was, living just 3 blocks from Lake Street. I never really stopped to think about it. I mean, I should have, because right next to Lake Street is 31st Street. Mm-hmm. But it never dawned on me that Lake Street is basically 30th Street. And so it's like when people are throwing around addresses, that's when I was looking for places a couple of years ago. People throwing around addresses saying, "Oh, I'm on Harriet and 40th, or I'm on Pillsbury and 28th." I always have to ask, "Well, is that near Lake Street?" Like, yeah, it's 2 blocks away, you jackass. It's in Lake Street is 30th.
I had never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, and
makes the grid work a little better.
It does. But I mean, I'm not. I don't want to say I feel out of place uptown, because it's cool places and I like hanging out.
You do, though.
But
you do feel out of place.
Well,
you know it.
But because I'm just not a liberal pinhead.
Well, you're not a hipster either. That's for sure.
I'm definitely not a hipster. I mean, there's nothing hip about. But it was a year of me attempting to enjoy the surroundings without letting the people piss me off. But I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back and try it again.
Liberal pinhead chicks are hot.
Well, they have.
So you gotta get over the liberal pinhead part.
If they don't have armpit hair.
Well, that's true, and that's very true. Or at least they shave their legs.
I think we should rephrase it. They're easy. They're not so hot, but they're sure as hell easy.
Well, easier than the conservative. Well, wait though. The ones that are truly conservative, that have like the really crazy conservative parents, way easier than the liberal ones.
But you know what I just have come to realize? Just wait till they're in their 40s, because that's when it all just. If you
think the bullshit's gone by then?
If you can't score on a regular basis with a 40-year-old woman who's probably hornier than you, then you're doing something wrong. And I didn't know this. I remember so clearly being, just an idiot 24-year-old guy thinking, boy, women my age are pretty hot. but what am I going to do in my 40s? These women don't look good to me. Then I get to my 40s, and just it's just a kook central, and they I mean, it's like you almost have to tell them, not tonight. I have a headache, but it's awesome. It's amazing. It's amazing.
See, I'm in prime age group for that then, because I should be hitting the 45-year-olds. That's where I gotta be. Well, I gotta change
class
the
it up a
target.
little bit. Let's try to respect these bitches. No, I'm just kidding. But
I'm sorry. I will start respecting the house.
I tell you
wait.
Well, do you remember being in sex ed class and they point out, or they attempt to, that a man hits a sexual prime at 18 and a woman at 31. Like
yes.
this
yes.
cruel joke that biology plays on us. That we're in high school and we would fuck anything.
And we're immature as hell too. Still.
And women wanted nothing to do with me at that age, and I don't blame them. But so I always thought, boy, women in their 30s. But they got it so wrong. It's women in their 40s because they're divorced and now they've missed out on like 15 years of good
chicks
sex.
are all professionals.
Yeah, they're
and
busy,
in the middle of the career,
having
and they're
kids.
working 70 hours a week. Yeah. You don't want to mess with them.
The women in their 40s. I mean, they're coming out of marriages. I left the word bad out because if you're coming out of a marriage, it was a bad marriage. But so they're coming out of bad marriages, reasonably sexless marriages, boring, and it's like, they haven't fucked more than 10 times in the last 10 years.
Right, because they hated each other.
And then they're ready to go off. I mean,
and they've got money. They want to go on vacation.
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
I need
kids might be out of the house. I mean, like at college or something.
At McGov Podcast on Twitter and find me on Facebook.
A tip of the hat to the 40-plus cougs out there. I mean, I can't say cougs. I shouldn't say cougs. I'm older than them. I'm 46.
Yeah, see, I call them cougs.
Yeah.
That's just
what do you mean
cougs?
Okay, I'll call them MILFs. I don't care. Whatever.
Well, whatever.
I mean,
I'm sure they love being called both.
No,
actually, chicks do like being called cougars because then they know that they're hot. Because you don't call a 45-year-old chick that's mediocre looking a cougar.
And how is MILF an insult when the F stands for?
I think it's just it's that word.
Well, I'm saying I want to fuck them.
If it were
that's a compliment.
Mother, I would like to make love to. I feel like somehow, but that doesn't
that's
work
gross.
with the acronym.
Yeah, that's gross. That makes me feel like some sort of Oedipus thing is going on. That's really creepy. But thanks for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for bringing up that visual. So anyway, we've talked about the Big Ten and the bowl games and the fact that I sweat a lot when I do a show, and I'm even a little flatulent and really unpleasant to be around. No
one needs to know that, but you love to tell them.
Well,
I mean, I know it obviously because I'm right here. But.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to get another 8 minutes out of the show. I mean, we don't have to.
We haven't talked Vikings.
Well, yeah.
I don't think did we touch the Vikings much at all yesterday?
Well, here, we just in passing because I was talking about the fact that on Sunday, I there've been 40 years of my life where everything revolves around seeing every second of every Viking game.
Yeah.
And that Sunday, I had to go look at this place, on 35th and Bryant, and I was in Burnsville and I needed to take a bus. And there's nothing worse than having to go from one part of the Twin Cities to another on a Sunday on a bus. Because
can't imagine much worse, actually.
Well, I mean, and Burnsville is not that far from South Minneapolis. I mean,
no, it's really not.
It's just a shot on 35. And typically I can jump on a bus, and then like an express, South Metro, Minnesota Valley Transit, whatever, and it just shoots right down 35 minutes over. But that's how it is on a weekday. On a Sunday, it's take a bus to the mall and take the light rail here, and then you get on this bus here, and then you catch a tanker up in the Twin Ports. I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, it's. I mapped out these routes on MTC, or not MTC, they don't call it that anymore, the Metro Transit app. And to see a house, which took 15, 20 minutes to walk through.
All of that for that?
Hour and 42 minutes each way. With multiple, sitting around waiting for this bus and that. It was just ridiculous. But because of that, I had to leave the Viking game. We're up by 3, and they were driving to tie the game.
Okay.
So I still have not seen the Jarius Wright play.
I just saw it today for the first time because I was kind of in the same boat as you. As soon as it went to overtime, I'm like, well, I got to work. So I hit the road, and on the way, 2 minutes into my car ride, I hear the Jarius Wright.
Started again. Sorry.
Thanks a lot. By the way, and I know PA's your friend. I'm not going to bash him or anything, but I hate the homer calls of every sport. Like, I don't want my commentators to necessarily be homers. Yep. But when he said, and he's loose, which I know is his new tagline, but I'm sitting there. I got goosebumps. I'm like, he's gone, Jerry's gone. Fucking right. Like, I was so pumped. I was with Paul at the time. I was feeling it.
That's whenever he does that, it is pretty exciting.
It is.
I mean, usually, and Adrian is loose.
Yeah.
You know,
he doesn't do it when it's like, and then he's taken down 5 yards after that. Like, it's always he is
you're
gone.
never, ever going to hear. And Jerome Felton is loose. You're not going to hear. You're not going to hear.
Right.
It's got to retain some importance. It's got to retain some meaning.
Although that would have been hilarious when Felton jumped on the fumble if he had said that.
Yeah, that would have been.
And Felton is loose.
That would have been funny. But by the way, I still don't even really know who Greg Johnson is or where he came from.
No, the new the new receiver that's taking over for Patterson and is obviously way better.
He's so good. I mean, I don't remember the specific game. I was in the middle of the season, and he's catching all these passes and scoring touchdowns, and I'm like, who the fuck is that guy?
I didn't know who it was.
I've never not known who a Viking is.
No,
it was just bizarre, and he continues to be the standout receiver on this team.
Think about it. I mean, watching him and watching the replays, it's we've talked about this ad nauseum almost, but when he runs a route, he runs the route, and that's how he's getting open. And you watch and you hear about Cordero Patterson. He's got all the talent in the world, but for some reason he can't do that little stutter step. I mean, I could fucking do what Johnson's doing. I just can't do it as fast.
Yeah.
But Patterson, you have all the tools. You just have to just copy that.
Have you seen the movie We Are Marshall?
No, I haven't actually. Somehow.
This is a little embarrassing for me to admit, but it's the one movie that I legitimately tear up every time. There's one moment in the movie where it's just like this emotional crescendo, and I mean I literally cannot not tear up. I'm like 10 for 10, and it happened to be on this weekend. It was on Saturday, and ironically, right leading into a Marshall Conference Championship game that they won. But there's a moment in the movie where this is post-crash, and they're rebuilding the program, with any kind of athlete they could get their hands on, and that a basketball player playing receiver, and he's like running the wrong routes in practices, and the assistant coach comes up to him and says, "You know what a post route is and a flag route, right?" And he goes, "No," like dopey, "No, I don't." And he says, "Well, see the goalpost, the post, a post route, you run 10 yards up the field and then run to the post. You see that flag in the end zone, the corner of the end zone? You run 10 yards straight downfield and you run to that flag." And I know that oversimplifies it a little bit, but that guy learned his routes in 10 seconds.
Right.
And I know there's wheel routes and option routes and a two-way, where you can go in, you can go out.
The double move is what the pros do well.
Yeah, well,
it's just running like you're faking one route and then going back to another one. Like how is that complicated?
And to me, there doesn't even have to be a right way or a wrong way to do it, as long as you do it the same way every time. Because if a quarterback knows how you run a route, if you get chemistry with that guy and continue to play with him, it shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
This guy, he cuts off his crossing routes a little too quickly, or he doesn't go deep enough on a post. He doesn't run the skinny post well enough. He runs it a little too wide. If he does that all the time, and he's got he's playing for years with the same quarterback, who cares? Because he knows where that guy's going to be out of his break.
Right.
So,
but I feel like it's the footwork thing. It's where it's kind of what you're saying too. You have to do it the same way every time. But so that's when you start that, like you're looking like you're going to do an inside slant. The cornerback goes, oh, he's doing an inside slant because I'm watching his footwork, right. And then you still switch back to the other one.
Well,
that's what the pros do.
Well, the running a route is about two things. It's about the quarterback knowing where you are without having to see you there.
Right.
And it's also about knowing that you can do something to get open. I mean, that's true. I mean, like we're seeing all these, replays. They got the camera, that hangs above the players' heads or whatever. So you get the end zone view.
The zip line camera.
Of a quarterback like throwing a slant route to a guy, and when he releases it, the receiver hasn't even turned his head.
Right.
He's yards away from the target, and all of a sudden he turns his head and makes the cut. And before the ball's halfway there by the time he sees it.
The whole play is muscle memory.
It's all about knowing where someone's going to be, when they're going to be there. It's all about the timing. Quarterback's got to take his 3 or 5 step drop and get the ball out on rhythm. And the guy's got to run the right route, and he's got to be able to do something to separate himself enough from the defender that the window is big enough for the ball to be delivered. And these things are just too much for Cordero Patterson to handle.
It's sad.
It's scary because
scary.
I mean, this guy was a first round pick, and up until 2 months ago, I was convinced, as most people were, that he was destined for stardom.
Well, but they knew he was raw. But you think, again, with the talent you have, the raw talent, why couldn't you mold him? No, well, and you.
Yeah, it's very raw.
I mean, obviously, in talking about him, that's
it's very raw.
But is this a coaching thing, too? Like, why can't Norv Turner get this guy figured out?
And then, I mean, my bit has always been, if you can't learn a route, I mean, We'll take you to Arthur Murray and get those little footprints they put on the floor to teach you to cha-cha-cha.
Yeah.
We're gonna put these little footprints all over the practice field. Just follow the yellow brick road, you goddamn idiot.
I mean, seriously, I don't understand what this guy's not figuring out.
But clearly, we're good. Thanks, Sam. Did you hear my voice crack as I talked to Sam?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like a nervous 8-year-old asking a girl to the spring dance. Oh no, yeah. But anyway, I digress. I have to because it's time to go. But I think the biggest thing is Patterson doesn't have technique to separate. I mean, he's got speed to separate, but he needs technique to separate. Tomorrow's a Wild Wednesday. We're going to talk some hockey at Burger Mo's. I'm still not sure who's going to be on the show. Jason and I will. I can tell you that much.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, Tony and Scott can suck it.